Hello, I'm Robert, voluntary fact checker and helping you if you're scared of many things. And I'm going to do another one of my series of short videos for this new blog post. So, Zelensky, as you likely know, is in the United States and is going to have a one-to-one meeting with Trump. And that starts at 13:15 EST, so that's 6:15 British summertime, which is where I live. So that's about a couple of hours from now, as when I'm making this video, and it might already have happened by the time you watch this video, but we'll likely won't hear until much later. So he's going to be talking to Trump one-to-one for an hour, and that's excellent because Trump and Zelensky get on very well when they're one-to-one. And the Oval meeting, the reason that didn't work out at all and went pear-shaped is because there were about half a dozen different Republicans on Trump's side on his team, all trying to make a point and score a point and competing with each other to score points. And in that situation it's very hard to get anything done. But with a one-to-one discussion like this between Trump and Zelensky, then so far all those meetings have gone very well. So we can expect this to be a good meeting too. It's highly unlikely to get another Oval Office. And then from 3 o'clock onwards, the European leaders will join them. And then these are the 7 European leaders. I want to explain what Zelensky is likely to say to Trump, and it's sort of how typically people will respond in a situation like this. And that's the basis on which you can get a pretty good idea of what Zelensky is going to say, how politicians respond in a situation like this. And that is they make a counter-proposal, and then why all these other people are there, which is rather unusual, but there's a reason for it. So, first of all, first of all, I noticed that BBC for the first time have mentioned that it would also be against Ukraine's constitution to agree to Putin's demands. It would in fact make Zelensky a criminal. He would have to resign, he would have to be fired as president, and he would achieve absolutely nothing because he wouldn't be able to give it to Putin. So that is the reason why Trump can't do that. And what so few people they're still not really explaining, don't explain properly, is that Zelensky can agree to an immediate ceasefire. That's in his powers as a president. He can agree in principle to territorial swaps, but then he has to explain that Ukraine people need to vote in a referendum before they can be approved. So that's the situation. So that's what he has to explain. So Putin has made this proposal, and this is very common. During a ceasefire negotiations or peace negotiations, one party makes a proposal. The other party knows that they can't accept that proposal for various reasons.
16 o'clock.
In this case, I'll just switch that off. I've got a thing that tells me the time from time to time, so that I notice time passing by. Anyway, so what normally happens is that they don't just say, I can't do that. They will come up with a counter proposal, and that is how they show that they are interested, but for some reason they can't accept the proposal as it is at present. So, given that Zelensky is clearly very keen to have a ceasefire, that's been very clear since since nearly this time last year, he's been really stressing that over and over and over again. So he would have agreed to a ceasefire probably a year ago, months ago. He would have agreed to a ceasefire on day one of the war as well, as we will see in a moment. That's what he wanted. So and this is not what he might say. I'm not trying to put words in his mouth, but just the sort of thing he would say. You could say, well, giving up the fortress belt of Donbas, and that's a huge ask, because we've fortified this throughout the war, and it's extremely important to our defense. But we would be willing to give that up if you give up something that is equally important to you, such as, for instance, Melitopol or the Kinburn-Spit coastline. I'm not saying this is what Zelensky will offer, but just to give an example of how these negotiations would go. So this shows it. So that's the area. If Putin got that, then he's on the heights there, little fortresses there, actually ancient hilltop fortresses from long ago, and they're very also even in a modern war, they are extremely strategic. And once he's got all those little fortresses, then he can go chasing off. He could start up another war and just take over large areas of the adjoining oblasts if it wasn't a fair ceasefire. So that's why Zelensky doesn't want to give those, especially doesn't want to give those to him. But what he could say is something like, well, you can have all of Donbas as long as we can have a big chunk of Melitopol and a big chunk of this area here. And that would sandwich Crimea on two sides, and that would make Russia very vulnerable. And that means that if the war started up again, both sides would have mutual vulnerabilities. So this is the sort of thing that, Zelensky, remember that Trump talked about ocean front being very valuable. Well, both of those would achieve the ocean front if it was a strip right down to there, blocking the coast, or even just a bit that could actually see the ocean, but this little strip that Russia still controlled, and then this bit. That's the sort of thing that would be a fair compromise. That would be about as valuable to Russia as that is to Ukraine. So that could be an example. So Zelensky, whatever he comes up with, he will come up with a counter-proposal, given that he's so very keen for this to work. And then it's over to Putin, and Putin would come up with another counter-proposal, and that's how it goes back and forth. And it is not typically sorted out straight away. So that's the main thing I want to say right away. And then Zelensky would explain that he can't agree to he hasn't got the power as a president to hand over anything to Putin. He's just not in his ability, and the Ukrainian parliament doesn't have that power either. The only people that can do that are the Ukrainian people in a referendum. According to the Ukrainian constitution, it's very clear on matters of territorial matters, then it has to be a referendum of all of Ukraine that makes that decision. And the Ukrainian constitution is interpreted by the Ukrainian Supreme Court, and there's no way with such very clear text that the Ukrainian Supreme Court will interpret to mean anything different than that a referendum is required. So that's the situation. There's nothing Zelensky can do about it. There's nothing that the parliament can do about it. There's nothing that the courts can do about it. That is just the situation according to the Ukrainian constitution. So he just has to explain that. And now Trump, as a deal maker, his mind just doesn't engage with the law in the way that other people do. But what he will recognize as a deal maker, sometimes in a deal, you can tell that the other person you're trying to make a deal with, there's certain things they simply can't shift on. And you may not know why they can't shift, but you can detect, you put extreme pressure on them, and they just say, sorry, I just can't do that. And Trump will be reinforced, Zelensky will be reinforced, and that's one of the reasons why the other people will be there. So yes, I'll just say that bit because it's very closely connected to that. So one of the reasons for the Allies is to reinforce Zelensky's message, that he simply is unable to move on this. So all the seven leaders will repeat that, and they will say, we've looked closely at the Ukrainian constitution, there's no way that Zelensky can shift on this. And Marco Rubio, who is on Trump's team, who is a far more mature politician, he will also, it's pretty certain that is why the things were held up in Alaska. Probably Marco Rubio told Trump, look, they can't move on that. So we have Marco Rubio telling Trump that, and you have all these seven leaders telling Trump that, and Trump will recognize that he can't move on that. So that's the first thing that's likely to have to be settled here. And so now I'll go into the next short video will be on the security guarantees. So I'll set this uploading, put a link in the video description, so go and click on that link and you can go to the blog post. And so hopefully that's all much clearer for you.